The Galactic Bounty. The Galactic Council Hall was silent. 1,000 alien eyes stared at the glowing screen in front of them. A name appeared in red letters. A name that sent fear through the galaxy. John Carter, the human. An old alien with wrinkled blue skin and 6 glowing eyes, spoke first. His voice was shaky. "We must stop him." A tall, armored figure stepped forward. This was General Tyron, the most feared bounty hunter in the universe. His black armor reflected the dim lights of the chamber. He had captured monsters, criminals, and warlords. He had never failed. "What is the reward?" Tyron asked, his voice cold. The council leader pressed a button. A number flashed on the screen. The highest bounty in history, enough to buy a fleet of warships. Gasps filled the room. Tyron's 4 lips curled into a smirk. "For one human, this will be easy." The council leader shook his head. "Many have tried. None have returned." The bounty hunters in the room exchanged nervous glances. They had heard the stories. A lizard-like alien whispered, "They say he cannot be killed." Another, with mechanical arms, added, "They say he fights like a demon." Tyron rolled his eyes. "Superstitions, he is just a human." But deep inside, something felt wrong. Why was the bounty so high? What had this human done to make the entire galaxy fear him? Tyron ignored the feeling. He was a professional. He didn't believe in legends. He would capture John Carter, and he would collect his reward. The hunt begins. Tyron's ship, the Black Fang, shot through hyperspace. His crew was ready, elite warriors from across the galaxy. They had hunted the deadliest creatures in existence. This was just one human. The ship's eyes spoke. Target located. Planet K-47. Uninhabited. Tyron smirked. "Prepare to land." The Black Fang entered the planet's atmosphere. K-47 was a wasteland. Rocky mountains, deep caves, endless darkness. A perfect place to hide. But John Carter was not hiding. The scanners picked up movement. One life form. One human. Tyron activated the comms. "Deploy the team. I want him alive." 10 bounty hunters jumped from the ship, weapons ready. They surrounded the target. A man stood in the middle of the canyon. He wore a torn jacket, dust covering his face. His dark eyes were calm. Too calm. Tyron watched from his ship, confused. Why wasn't he running? A reptilian soldier aimed his plasma rifle. "John Carter, surrender now." The human slowly lifted his hands. Then he spoke. His voice was quiet but firm. "You should run." The hunters laughed. One human against 10 trained killers. They moved in. Then, everything went wrong. The unstoppable human. The first hunter lunged forward. John moved like a shadow. In a blink, he grabbed the alien's weapon and twisted his arm. "Karate!" The soldier screamed. Before the others could react, John was already attacking. He didn't have a gun. He didn't need one. He moved too fast, too precise. He dodged plasma shots, using the rocky terrain as cover. One hunter tried to stab him. John caught the blade with his bare hands. He twisted it, slamming the attacker into the ground. Tyron watched from above. His heart pounded. This was impossible. In less than a minute, all 10 bounty hunters were on the ground. Some groaning, some not moving at all. John looked up at the Black Fang, his eyes locking onto Tyron. He was smiling. That's when Tyron felt something he had never felt before. Fear. A message to the galaxy. Tyron's ship lifted off, retreating into the sky. He had seen enough. On board, he played the last transmission from the battle. His crew watched in stunned silence. One human had taken down his best men without a single weapon. Then a new signal appeared on the screen. A message. John Carter's voice echoed through the ship. "If you come for me, I will come for you." Tyron's fists clenched. The hunt was far from over. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure if he was the hunter or the prey. First contact. The hunters become the hunted. The bounty hunters never returned. Their last recorded transmission was nothing but screams. General Siren sat in his dark warship, watching the footage again. The images flickered, blurry, chaotic. His best hunters rushing forward, weapons drawn. Then silence. The screen turned to static. One moment, 10 elite killers. The next gone. He leaned forward, rewinding the footage frame by frame. There, a single frozen image. A shadow moving between them, faster than the eye could follow. John Carter. Siren's fingers tightened into a fist. He had hunted criminals, assassins, warlords, but never had he seen one man take down an entire squad. And the strangest thing, the human wasn't running. He was waiting. The second wave. The black fang hovered over the barren wasteland of planet K-47. Below, the wind howled across the dead rock. The battlefield was untouched, as if nothing had happened, except for the missing bodies. The alien crew shifted nervously. The silence was wrong. Something was watching them. Tyron turned to his second-in-command, a massive cybernetic warrior named Drask. Send in the next team. Drask hesitated. General, if he wiped out the first group, perhaps we should. Siron growled, eyes burning. He is one man. Drask nodded and gave the order. This time, 20 soldiers descended from the ship, heavily armed, battle-tested, ready for war. They formed a tight formation, scanning every rock, every shadow. Still, nothing. A metallic voice crackled in their earpieces. Stay sharp. He's here. Then the ground shifted beneath them. The trap. It wasn't a desert. It was a battlefield John had already prepared. The first explosion sent dust and fire into the sky, throwing aliens off their feet. The second sent their own equipment against them, gravity mines pulling soldiers into the air, pulse grenades detonating their shields. The soldiers scrambled, shouting. Then he came. A blur in the smoke, moving faster than they could aim. One by one, the alien warriors fell. John Carter wasn't shooting. He didn't need to. He fought like something out of legend. He ripped a plasma rifle from one soldier's grip, turned it, fired. One shot. Precise. Lethal. Another warrior swung a blade. John dodged, grabbed the attacker's own momentum, and slammed him into the rock, bones cracking like dry leaves. Siron watched from above, fists clenching. This isn't a fight, Drask whispered. It's a massacre. The humans' warning. Minutes later, it was over. 20 warriors had gone in. One human had walked out. John stood in the middle of the canyon, looking up at the warship, at Siron. Then he did something that sent a chill through the entire crew. He waved. A casual, mocking gesture. Then his voice came through their comms. He had hacked their signal. You sent 20. Send more. I'll be waiting. Silence filled the command deck. No one spoke. For the first time in his life, General Siron felt it deep in his bones. This wasn't just a mission anymore. This was war. The human mind, more dangerous than weapons. It started with a whisper, a silent fear that crept through the ranks of the Galactic Council. No one spoke it out loud, but they all felt it. This human was different. The Council's fear, deep inside the grand halls of the Galactic Council, the most powerful leaders of the universe gathered. Their faces, scaled, metallic, furred, were filled with unease. A massive screen displayed the latest battle report from General Siron's fleet. 1 human. 30 dead warriors. No injuries on the target. No sign of exhaustion. Silence filled the chamber. Finally, a high-ranking warlord, a 6-armed brute from the Karkal Empire, slammed his fist onto the table. This is impossible, he roared. 1 human against an army. This cannot happen. The council leader, a being older than most civilizations, exhaled slowly. "We told you," he whispered. "You should have never put a bounty on a human." Zyron's obsession. Meanwhile, aboard the Black Fang, General Zyron stood in front of a holographic map. Every planet, every battlefield, every failed mission. He studied them all. He replayed every video of John Carter in combat, paused each frame, analyzed every movement. But the answer remained the same. John didn't just fight like a soldier. He fought like a survivor. He didn't rely on brute strength like the Karkal warriors. He didn't depend on technology like the cybernetic Skathi assassins. John adapted. He learned. He watched. And worst of all, he never made the same mistake twice. Drask, his second in command, approached cautiously. "Sir, the men are uneasy. They say the human is toying with us." Zyron clenched his jaw. Was it true? Had John Carter already figured out how they hunted? Was he leading them into his own game? The general slammed his fist onto the table. "Prepare the next wave. Double the numbers. Lock down the planet." Drask hesitated. "Sir, what if?" Zyron's eyes burned with fury. "I don't care what he is. He will fall." But deep inside, Zyron wasn't sure anymore. John Carter's mind. On the barren surface of planet K-47, John Carter crouched behind a ridge, watching the next wave of bounty hunters land. Twice as many as before. Didn't matter. He wasn't fighting them. He was studying them. John had already learned their movement patterns, their weapons, their weaknesses. They thought they were hunting him. They were wrong. He adjusted the stolen comm device on his wrist, listening to their conversations. Their leader was frustrated, desperate. John smiled. Good, desperate enemies make mistakes. The attack that never came. Zyron's troops spread out, forming a massive perimeter. Every possible escape route was blocked. The perfect trap. But as the hours passed, something felt off. No attack. No ambush. The human was nowhere. A cold dread spread through the soldiers. The tension built. The silence became unbearable. Then, "Sir," a soldier shouted through the radio. "The ships, our ships." Zyron turned to the sky. His blood ran cold. Above them, in the darkness of space, his fleet was moving, but not by his command. The hacker. Alarms blared. Screens flickered. John Carter had done the unthinkable. He had hacked into their own fleet. Using stolen alien tech, he had studied their security systems. He had found the weak spots. And now, the Black Fang's own warships were turning against them. Zyron watched, helpless, as his own fleet began firing on itself. One by one, the massive warships exploded in fiery chaos. John's voice crackled through Zyron's comm. "You're not fighting the soldier. You're fighting the human." A pause. Then, "And we don't lose." Zyron's rage turned into something he had never felt before. Not anger. Not frustration. Pure, unshakable fear. No chains can hold him. The first mistake was thinking John Carter could be caught. The second mistake was thinking he could be held. The capture. General Zyron stood in the wreckage of his own fleet. Smoke still drifted from the ruined ships above. His forces were in chaos, their morale shattered. But in the middle of it all, they had him. John Carter. He knelt on the cold metal floor, wrists bound in quantum shackles. Unbreakable, unhackable, impossible to escape. A glowing energy field surrounded him, designed to suppress even the strongest alien warriors. And yet, he looked bored. Zyron stepped forward, his shadow falling over the human. "You've caused enough trouble." John tilted his head. "That's funny. I was about to say the same thing to you." Zyron's fist struck like a hammer. John didn't flinch. Blood dripped from his lip, but his eyes never changed. No fear, no defeat. Zyron leaned in close. "You think this is a game, human?" John smirked. not a game. A lesson. Xiron gritted his teeth. And what lesson is that? John's smirk widened. You should have used stronger chains. The impossible escape. The Black Fang's highest security prison was built to hold the deadliest beings in the galaxy. Creatures with the strength to crush planets. Killers who could tear through walls. But it wasn't built for a human. Because humans didn't break things with brute force. They outfought them. Inside his cell, John Carter sat perfectly still, listening, watching, counting. Every guard shift, every security drone pass, the flickering in the power grid. He was mapping the system in his head. Then he found it. The flaw. A small delay between security scans. A half-second power surge when the force field recharged. That's all he needed. That's all humans ever needed. The hunt turns. Drask, Xiron's second in command, watched the security feeds in the command center. Something felt off. The human had been too quiet. Check on the prisoner, he ordered. A guard nodded and tapped his wrist device to open the cell feed. The screen flickered. Then it went black. The guard frowned. That's weird. The lights cut out. Alarms blared. A warning flashed across every screen. Prisoner escaped. Drask froze. That's impossible. A scream echoed through the hallway. The guard rushed to check, only to find his squad already down. Then the cameras came back online. John Carter was standing in the command center, holding Drask's rifle. "Miss me?" he asked. Drask lunged, but John moved first. One swift motion, and the massive alien crashed to the ground. Unconscious. The Black Fang was no longer under Xiron's control. The message. When Xiron returned to the ship, his crew was already restrained, his weapons locked away. And sitting in his chair, feet kicked up on the control panel, was John Carter. Xiron froze. John smiled. "Took you long enough." The general's hands clenched into fists. "How?" John shrugged. "I watched. I learned. I escaped." He leaned forward. "Because that's what humans do." Xiron's chest tightened. You're not normal." John laughed. "Oh, I know." Then he leaned in, his voice quiet but sharp as a blade. "Tell the council, no more bounties on humans. Ever." Xiron hesitated. "And if they don't?" John stood up, stretched, and gave him a knowing grin. "Then I come back." Then, in front of the entire crew, John Carter walked off the Black Fang. Into the stars, the secret weapon of humanity. He was gone. General Xiron stood in the wreckage of his own ship, his own men tied up, his weapons locked away, his fleet crippled, his reputation shattered. And John Carter, he had simply walked out. No alarms, no explosions, just walked away. As if the greatest bounty hunt in history had been a joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was a message, and the entire galaxy had heard it. The fear spreads. The bounty had been simple: capture a human. Now, no one dared to try. Across the galaxy, bounty hunters erased their contracts. Warlords canceled their plans. Even the most powerful alien empires whispered the same words: "Do not hunt humans." But in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, one voice refused to be silenced. "We must end him." The council leader, an ancient being with skin like molten rock, sat motionless. His glowing eyes burned into the hologram of John Carter. "He escaped the Black Fang," the leader said. "He humiliated our best hunters." A reptilian warlord hissed. "If we let this continue, we show weakness." A mechanical voice agreed. "He is only one human. We must destroy him before others become like him." Silence fell over the chamber. Then the oldest council member, a creature with 1,000 shifting tendrils, spoke. "You are all wrong." The warlords turned. The ancient being leaned forward, his voice heavy with something none of them wanted to admit. "Fear. It is not his strength that makes him dangerous. It is not his weapons. It is not his speed. The warlords listened. It is his mind, his will, his refusal to break. The room fell silent. Then the leader asked the question that had been haunting them all. What if all humans are like him? The human secret. Deep in the ruins of an abandoned outpost, John Carter sat by a flickering fire. His wounds ached. His muscles were tired. But he wasn't done. He was never done. That was the secret the aliens didn't understand. It wasn't about power, or weapons, or technology. It was about something no alien in the galaxy had ever needed: the human instinct to survive. Aliens were born into strength, into power, into long lifespans and advanced civilizations. But humans? Humans were born into struggle. Every inch of progress, every victory, every survival story was earned through pain. That's why the aliens would never understand. And that's why John Carter would never lose. Because to him, this wasn't war. This was just another day. The Council's decision. Back in the Grand Chamber, the warlords argued. Some wanted to send an armée. Others wanted to retreat. Then, the Council leader spoke the words that would change history. There will be no war. The warlords froze. No fleet. No more bounty. A silence. Then what do we do? One of them asked. The Council leader's glowing eyes burned bright. We wait. A new beginning. Somewhere, on the edges of the galaxy, a lone human ship drifted through the void. Inside, John Carter sat at the controls. He checked his weapons, scanned the star maps, smirked. The hunt was over. But the war, that had just begun. Because now, the galaxy knew what humans were, and they would never forget. The final battle, the unstoppable force. The first time, they underestimated him. The second time, they feared him. Now, they were sending everything they had. And John Carter, he was ready. The Council's last move. Across the galaxy, fear of humans spread like wildfire. No one wanted to say it out loud, but the truth was clear. If one human could do this, what if there were more? The Galactic Council could not allow such a question to exist. So, they made their final move. A planet-sized warship, the Doombringer, was dispatched. It carried the largest alien army ever assembled. 10 million soldiers, weapons capable of cracking moons, armies that had conquered entire civilizations. Their mission was simple: find John Carter, kill him, erase his name from history. The galaxy watched. This time, the aliens told themselves he wouldn't escape. This time, the unstoppable human would finally fall. The calm before the storm. John Carter sat on a quiet asteroid, staring at the distant stars. He had been hunted, chased, cornered, but this wasn't fear in his eyes. It was understanding. He had known from the beginning how this would end. It was never about survival, never about escape. It was about proving a point. The aliens wanted to believe humans were weak. John had given them every chance to walk away. They didn't listen. So now he was going to teach them the final lesson. Humans don't just survive. Humans win. The Doombringer arrives. The planet-sized warship loomed over the battlefield like a god of war. From the bridge, General Siren stood, his face hard, his fists clenched. He had failed before. He had underestimated Carter before. This time, he would not make that mistake. All units, Xiron growled, his voice echoing through the fleet. Open fire. The battle begins. Fire rained from the sky. Entire mountains were vaporized. The asteroid belt shattered under the force of planetary cannons. It was the most overwhelming firepower ever unleashed on a single man. But when the dust cleared, John Carter was still there, standing, unshaken, waiting. And then, he moved. The counterattack. It was chaos. One moment, the army was confident, their numbers overwhelming. The next, they were facing something they didn't understand. John didn't fight like them. He didn't follow their tactics. He didn't play by their rules. He made his own. Using the wreckage of the battlefield, he outmaneuvered the army's most advanced machines. He turned their own weapons against them. Every mistake they made, he punished. Every fear they had, he exploited. And soon, the whispers began. This is impossible. He's just one man. No, he's not. The realization hit them all at once. He's human. Xiron's last stand. On the bridge of the Doombringer, Xiron watched his forces collapse. His best warriors, gone. His greatest weapons, useless. The bounty that started as a simple hunt had turned into the greatest defeat in galactic history. And then the alarms blared. The Doombringer was under attack. Xiron turned, his body frozen. The security cameras flickered. In the heart of the warship, inside the most secure chamber in the galaxy, John Carter was already there. Standing, smiling, waiting. The final words. Xiron staggered back. How? John stepped forward, his voice calm. You never understood, did you? The general swallowed hard. What do you want? John's expression didn't change. I want you to remember this day. The alarm screamed louder. The ship shook. John turned to leave. Before stepping out, he gave one final warning. Never hunt a human again. And then he was gone. The end of the hunt. The Doombringer fell. The Galactic Council collapsed. And the legend of John Carter, the unstoppable human, spread across the stars. The bounty was erased. No one ever dared to hunt a human again. Because they knew the truth. Humans were not prey. They were the storm. The legend of the unstoppable human. They called it the day the galaxy changed. Some called it a war. Others called it a massacre. But those who had been there, those who had seen it with their own eyes, they called it a warning. Because on that day, the most powerful armies in the universe came to hunt one man. And they lost. The aftermath. Smoke and wreckage drifted in space. What had once been the Doombringer, the Galactic Council's greatest weapon, was now a burning graveyard. Across the stars, transmissions echoed with the same message. The bounty is canceled. No one hunts the human. It wasn't an order. It was fear. The aliens had always believed that humans were weak, soft, inferior. Now, they knew the truth. And the truth was terrifying. Xiron's defeat. General Xiron sat in the remains of his warship, staring at the broken screens in front of him. He had spent his entire life hunting monsters, capturing the deadliest beings in the galaxy. But John Carter was something else. Xiron's fingers trembled as he replayed the last security footage. There he was, the human, walking through fire. Unstoppable. Unbreakable, smiling as if this had all been some kind of game. A whisper escaped Xiron's lips. What are you? And somewhere, among the stars, a voice seemed to answer. Human. The council falls. The Galactic Council had ruled for 1,000 years. They had ended wars, enslaved planets, destroyed entire civilizations. But now, they were afraid. The council chamber was silent. No arguments, no orders, just fear. The council leader, once the most powerful being in the galaxy, closed his glowing eyes. It is over, he whispered. Because if one human could do this, what if there were more? A new era. Across the galaxy, whispers spread. Stories of the human who could not be stopped. Some thought he was a myth, a ghost, a warning to those who dared to challenge Earth. But those who knew the truth, those who had seen him fight, they knew better. Because somewhere, in the vast darkness of space, a lone ship drifted. Inside, John Carter leaned back in his seat, watching the stars. The hunt was over. The war was won. But his job, His job had just begun. The final message. Before he disappeared, John Carter sent one final message to the galaxy. A message that would never be forgotten. Never come for us again. Because next time, we come for you.